Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members.
Hey, you want to join Toolbox for half price? Act now. For this week only, use code EPISODE157 and save $100 on this amazing community. That's right. A 1-year membership will only cost you $100. Act now.
PI Perspectives.
You guys have been hearing for a long time about how much I love Crosstracks, but now you're going to hear from somebody else. So we got George Gerges here. George is a member and a user of Crosstracks. George, tell me real quickly what you love about Crosstracks.
The simplicity of using it and the ability to customize everything that you could do with Crosstracks is awesome. It actually allowed me to take the way that I do my business and implement it into their system. And not only am I able to manage 10 or 15 cases, I'm able to manage 50 to 100 cases with the same effort.
Fantastic. So Crosstracks, the case management system, they are SOC 2 certified. Basically, that's an encryption, really an upgrade. They're the only ones out there that are doing it. So please support this great sponsor that supports our show. Check them out. The links are in the show notes. Crosstracks, if you're an investigator, you should be using them today.
Welcome to PI Perspectives, and we hope you're having a great Labor Day. We all work so hard in this industry, and we're sure there are some folks working today building cases. So Matt welcomes Dan Collins from Massachusetts. We're continuing the theme of criminal investigations, and we're getting Dan's take on post-conviction investigations. These are the type of cases that can keep you up at night for sure. So let's get right into it. Please welcome Dan Collins and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Today I am honored to welcome Dan Collins to our program. Dan is a PI up in Massachusetts. I've known him through NALI and just a really great PI. I've actually used him, outsourced stuff up to Massachusetts in the Boston area. He's handled for me and done a great job. Today we're continuing this theme of criminal investigations. We've had some really great criminal investigators on the last few weeks. I figured why not? Let's keep it going. So I want to welcome Dan Collins to the program. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah. So Level Investigations, and you're out of Massachusetts. You're in the Boston area, right? Or close to it?
Yeah, I'm in a town called Woburn, which is about 20 minutes north of Boston proper area. I'm in a really good spot right where the interstates meet. So I hit most of Massachusetts with my work. A lot of my work is mainly in the Boston area because that's where the crime happens. But there's still plenty of work to do in the neighboring communities.
Right. That's where all the movies come from, right? Boston crime.
Yeah. That's funny. I've got one case right now where it's starting to kind of rub up against the north end of Boston, kind of crime family type stuff. And, it started real small, but it's getting bigger and bigger the further the investigation goes. So it's an interesting one. It's
crazy like that. So one of your mentors was John LaJoy, right? And we all know John. Yes. Passed recently. He was very influential to you. Talking about crime and the Boston area, it just reminded me of a story that John told me. And John was always good for a bunch of stories. We were talking about the Isabella Gardner museum heist. And he was very involved in trying to recover some artwork. He had a very interesting story on that.
No kidding. I hadn't got that story. I didn't know he was involved in that at all. But that's I think it was actually a Netflix documentary on that.
That's how I found out about it. So I was talking to John. It's like, hey, I just saw this great documentary on this stuff. He goes, let me tell you a little insight on this one. Like start artwork.
I believe it.
2 hours later, the story still wasn't done, but we got some good info.
Yeah, that sounds like John. But it also sounds like John. He was in everything. He was criminal defense.
So
I worked with him on a few cases.
Yeah. So let's focus back on that. So John was kind of a mentor to you, and even Brandon Perrin, who was a guest a few weeks ago, was pretty influential in the work that you do. And we're going to talk about post-conviction investigations today, and just get your take on it. And we've done the topic before, but I wanted to get your perspective on this stuff. So before we jump into all that, I got some housekeeping things to get off my list here too.
Yeah.
We met through NALI, and you are a regional director for NALI, and there's an event that's coming up down in Virginia. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that event that's coming up?
Yeah. I mean, John is the one that recruited me to NALI initially several years ago. I was a member, and then he wanted to recruit me onto the executive council there because I was very involved with my state organization where John used to be the president. And then he got me involved, and I'm regional director now, which covers the 12 states. And one of John's ideas that we spoke about a couple of years ago was bringing back the regional conferences. It was a big thing for NALI. It was a recruiting tool. It was a way to get a lot of the members who don't necessarily have the ability to make it out to the national conferences that might be states away, thousands of miles away. So they used to require the regional conferences, but they stopped requiring that. So they just kind of went away. But I think that they're a fantastic opportunity. And so Region 1, which is my region, we're going to be hosting in Alexandria, Virginia, October 27th and 28th. And it's basically just a single day seminar with some networking events the day before. So it's going to be fantastic. We've got some great names. We've got Mike Bocalico, who is a big financial investigator. He works for, he runs a company that's also a government contractor working in intelligence investigations. He's going to be talking about ethics, which is fantastic. We've got Herman Weisberg, who I actually was connected to through you. And Herman's got some big time investigations. So he's going to be talking about working with the media, the pros and cons working with the media, which is something I tend to stay away from, but I can see how that would definitely come in handy sometimes, or there's obviously some drawbacks you need to be aware of. And so he's going to help us out with that. We've got
Jen Sorosis.
Jen Sirwa. Yeah. Jen is out of New Jersey. She's a bulldog when it comes to public records research. Is just finding things, finding people, finding money, finding information. And she's always thinking about the next possible route that you could take. And she just goes way out of the box. And so I'm looking forward to how she presents the way her mind works, because sometimes it's pretty incredible to listen to her come up with strategy. And we also got Patrick Seward, who's out of Virginia. And Patrick is going to be talking about cell phone location and things like that. A little bit of a closer look.
Yeah, it's a great event. I'm actually driving down to that one. Usually I fly, but I'm going to road trip that one. So
I should also mention too, by the way, not to interrupt, I'm sorry, but one of the best things about this conference is we're going to be showcasing the CLI certification, which a lot of people contact us and they want to get themselves certified, involved in that sort of thing. But there's a specific route that you need to take in order to get that certification. And it always starts with the white paper. You need to write the white paper. And so our thoughts were, we're going to get started on the white paper at the conference. We're going to have a workshop. We're going to have CLIs at present. We're going to have CLIs helping out, help you get started on your topic, help you get started on your outline and getting going. It's 1,000 words. It's not a full doctoral thesis, but you do need to have some pretty good fact basis behind it. And, we're going to get everybody started on that too.
Yeah, I used to be so intimidated about writing the 1,000 words. Like it's not, you think it's really intimidating. I wrote a chapter for a book that Chelsea Binns and Bruce Sackman put out, The Art of Investigation, first edition. The actual second version, part 2 is coming out soon. And I remember when Chelsea had asked me to do it, she's like, yeah, I need 7,000-8,000 words in the next 2 weeks. And I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? Right. But when you sit down to actually start banging out words, it's amazing how quickly you get to that number. And I actually ended up doing over, and I'm glad I did over. It ended up when they redlined everything, it shrank, that's really cool, man. I'm looking forward to that. Like I said, I'm going to be there. I'll be sponsoring with the Toolbox, and I'm always at NALI events. I love going to NALI events. I love my NALI friends. It is really a community. If you're just getting into this industry and this business, that's a place where you want to be. Even if you can't join, if you don't have enough experience to join, just meeting these mentors, these people that are really paving the way for our industry. And, what's exciting to me is to see folks like you who don't have the same years of experience as guys like John LaJoy or Kitty Haley or things like that, or Kelly Riddle. We're the next generation, right? And we're doing it. We're establishing those relationships, just like those guys established their relationships in that community. So it's really exciting to see that the folks that we know are going to be around the next 15, 20 years, where you have that network all over the country now of really qualified people. And that COI is a big deal. It's really a good qualification to have. So you definitely, folks check that out, and we want to make sure that we're there. Before we jump into a commercial break, because I do want to get into the topic at hand here and get into that discussion. Tell me a little bit about how you got into the business.
Well, you're talking about how we're kind of the next generation. I did kind of take a different career route than I think a lot of investigators do. I was never law enforcement. I have a bachelor's in criminal justice, but I decided I didn't want to go the law enforcement route. I interned with a probation office. I interned with a police department, and it just didn't feel like a right fit. So I had gone to a small college in New Hampshire, and they put out a magazine where the front cover was a private investigator that had, she was now vice president of a PI company. And I thought, I had thought of that as a possible career path. So I reached out to her, and she agreed to meet with me, and that ended up turning into a job. And now here we are. 17 years later, I started Level Investigations almost 10 years ago, and we're flying through.
That's awesome, man. It's really, really good stuff. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into the topic. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
NALI is at it again with its next regional meeting. There is some awesome training scheduled in Alexandria, Virginia on October 27th and the 28th. The focus is on what it takes to become a certified legal investigator. So learn more at NALI.com. That's NALI.com.
I want to talk to everybody today about ScopeNow.com. ScopeNow has been a big-time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today, and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. What it comes down to is ScopeNow is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information, I think is one of the best points of how ScopeNow can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research, because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship, analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with ScopeNow is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. if you're a member of Scope Now, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that Scope Now is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Looking for an insurance agent that puts you first? Every PI business is different. That's why OREP Insurance can shop multiple markets to ensure you get the best coverage to meet your unique business needs. OREP's model is business by the golden rule, and for over 20 years, they've built their business by putting their clients first. So come enjoy a fast online application and same-day certificates of insurance at orep.org. OREP has coverage for armed investigators, executive protection, and even has a separate policy for security firms. The application takes less than 5 minutes, so visit orep.org today. orep.org. Check out the latest issue of PI Magazine, available online or by hard copy. Visit pimagazine.com to learn more.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today, I'm very honored to have my friend Dan Collins from Massachusetts here. Dan, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we are getting your take, your perspective on post-conviction investigations. For those who don't know that terminology, what that is, can you break it down for me?
So post-conviction is just like it sounds. It's a defense type investigation after somebody's already been convicted, and they're going through the appeals process, or maybe it's before they've actually officially started the appeals process, and they just want to explore what their options are. I've been hired for post-conviction even before they've retained an attorney, because your name gets around. You do criminal defense long enough, your name gets passed around the jails and the prisons, and you're getting phone calls, and you don't always take those cases, but you want to take the good ones and the ones that you trust won't lead you astray. But at the end of the day, I love the concept of post-conviction investigation, because you don't want the wrong guy in jail. And that's why we do the criminal defense investigation in the first place. That's the trial phase.
Right.
Trial phase.
What's the discernment on when you get that phone call from somebody? Like, what's the checklist to say, like, okay, this is something I'd be interested in, or no, I think I'm going to pass?
Well, 9 times out of 10, I should mention, I want an attorney involved. And if an attorney is not involved, I want to get an attorney involved very quickly. And the reason being is it's very fact specific when it's a post-conviction investigation. The criminal defense trial phase, before the trial, before there's been any sort of conviction, guilty verdict, plea deal, whatever it is, you've got a lot of exploration that you could do in the investigation. You can kind of take a bunch of different routes, kind of explore different theories of the crime. And with the post-conviction, you really need to narrow down exactly what the appeal is. And that's why the attorney is so necessary. You want to, light went off, I apologize.
Yeah, no.
Do you want me to?
No, we're good. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So, you really want to make sure you're focusing in on the attorney there. The attorney is going to advise you the best route to take, because they're going to be the ones that tell you this is something that we can use an investigation on. A lot of post-conviction, you don't really need the investigation because it's really technical lawyer speak. You know, somebody objected to something in the wrong way, or they didn't object to something in the wrong way. The investigation, most of mine are ineffective assistance of counsel arguments. So, for example, it doesn't necessarily have to even be a bad attorney. You know, a lot of times they're excellent attorneys, but you know, they decided to go for a particular strategy that obviously didn't work out because it resulted in a conviction. And so now we need to kind of go back and audit the decisions that they made throughout the whole trial process. And what you can do is you can find where they maybe skipped over a fact that you could have explored more. And so a lot of times I'm asked to find facts that could have been found and moreover should have been found by the trial counsel.
So it's like, okay, you had a bunch of threads, you pulled on the wrong thread, let's pull on this other thread and do the exercise to see if, had we pulled on this thread, would that have led to a different outcome?
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing too is you don't need to necessarily prove that it would have led to a different outcome. You don't need to perform an entire proof of the crime. You don't need to beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not no longer a thing in the post-conviction appeals world. You need to find something that you can convince the appeals court is significant enough. And so if you can show enough points for the ineffective assistance of counsel, for example, that trial attorney just went in the wrong direction and they should have gone in the right direction.
So what happens at that point? Let's say the appeals court reviews your findings and says, okay, yeah, there was a mistake was made here. Is there now a second trial or another trial that needs to take place with this new information?
Yeah, well, the goal is to file a motion with the appeals court, and it's literally called a new trial motion. You're not really asking necessarily to overturn, although that's what you're doing. What you're asking for is we need another bite at the apple. We need another opportunity to show beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is not guilty because the state didn't have enough facts in evidence that should, that led to a conviction.
So how is that not considered double jeopardy?
Well, if the, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but
this is not legal advice, people. We're just having.
Yeah, I'm not giving legal, but at the end of the day, the appeals court is wiping that conviction clean. It never happened. In that sense, as far as jeopardy goes, but in the new trial, you now have the extra. You're back in the trial phase, but you do have sworn testimony and actual evidence that are now potentially evidence in the new trial. So you want to, it's a whole different ball game even on that second trial. But at least you're back at the beyond a reasonable doubt standard.
Sure.
Getting the appeal and getting the new trial, that's the hardest part.
Right.
And I wouldn't be able to tell you a success rate on those cases, but at least my personal experience, it's not a high success rate in getting it. Right. Because you're really trying to reach a high bar, and that's really just convincing how significant the new evidence might be.
I would have to say the burden of proof has to be pretty substantial for an appellate court to reverse that decision, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. They don't want to. They don't want to do that because it's a big burden on the system, and you don't want to. You want to keep the system. There's a standard, and the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. And if it's already been proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty, they want to trust that the trial system in the first place was good and legitimate. And if you're constantly overturning convictions, then you're really kind of eroding at the concept of the trial in the first place.
I'm guessing that you're not getting many Christmas cards from district attorney offices, right? Yeah, you know what? They're actually very good. A lot of them, they get it. They get the idea. We're
we're two sides of the same coin. We both need to exist in order for it to happen. That's the purpose of having the adversarial system. You need the two sides to argue. If one side has all the power in the argument, then it's not a fair outcome in either direction.
Yeah, and that's something that Brandon Parent definitely preaches and teaches, and you saying that, it's like, okay, yeah, this guy's definitely, he's buddies with Brandon and talking about this stuff.
Brandon was pretty instrumental for me. I spent a good 5-6 years. So I'm going off topic a little bit, but that first company I started working for had partnered with Brandon and the CDIT. So we got a lot of just one-on-one time with him, and it was fantastic. And so I have a lot to thank to Brandon and the old company. That company was case in point, and they did a fantastic, and they're still going too. They're doing a good job up in New Hampshire.
Right. So do any of these cases ever haunt you, in one way or the other? Like, oh, I couldn't crack this one, and I know this guy's not it, or it's like, wow, this guy's really messed up. The stuff that I've seen here is horrifying.
Yeah, I have a couple cases that are post-conviction right now that, I don't know if haunt is the right word, but they stick on you. You're laying in bed and you can't sleep, and you're trying to think about all the different ways that you could figure out how to get this guy out of jail, because you in your heart believe that, even if you don't know if they're innocent, because none of us really know, we weren't there. You believe that the trial was not fair enough, and that's really the point. And so you're trying to figure out, how can we prove, most of the post-conviction investigations, the system won't bother with it if it's a simple drug possession or assault battery or something like that. Mm-hmm. So most of my post-conviction are the big ones. They're the murders. I have an armed robbery. And that armed robbery, for example, that's a classic example where they use DNA evidence improperly, I would argue. And the attorney I'm working with on that one believes the same. And we're doing the best we can to get that kid out, because he didn't get a fair shake. And, you really want to keep pushing. You really just want to keep pushing. And, I guess from an investigation perspective, you're not necessarily facing a time crunch like you are with a trial phase, because right to a speedy trial, you don't want the person to be sitting in jail waiting for trial longer than they have to be. And certainly you don't want them to be sitting in jail if they've been innocent, but at least, you can make sure that it's right. You can get it done right. And so we're just constantly going at it. Massachusetts, I should mention, they have a quasi-governmental agency called CPCS. It's the Committee for Public Counsel Services. And that's the organization that funds the trial phase of defense. They fund the bar advocates, the attorneys that represent the indigent. They fund the vendors like investigators and stenographers, and all the experts, the medical experts and handwriting experts, the interpreters, things like that. But there's a small part of that CPCS where it's the Innocence Project, really, and they're funded through mostly grants. And so they're great because they run slightly differently, slightly separately. And the woman who runs it is herself a defense attorney, an appeals attorney. Sure. And so we get a lot of back and forth on strategy, on the best way to go about doing it. And so Massachusetts, I can't speak to other states, but Massachusetts is underfunded, but they have an interesting system that helps us really get the right opportunities for these guys that want to fix their scenario.
And I think probably every state can say that they're underfunded. That's just the nature of the business here. So what would you say would be a mistake that some investigators getting into this type of business would make? What's something to be aware of, not to, not to go that route or do that thing?
Well, I think case management is pretty important, and that was one thing I learned early. Is you get hungry to investigate, and unfortunately, the reality is we're underfunded, and so you can kind of blow your budget really quickly if you're not careful. In case management, I'm constantly preaching to my employees, my other investigators. Let's just keep that in mind, because that Innocence Project is funded through grants. They don't have an infinite supply of a money tree. Yeah, and even the criminal defense side, a lot of times the trial phase, they're a little bit easier with money because they really want to make sure they get it right at that first bite of the apple. But the post conviction, like you said, mostly grant money, so you really want to just be careful. And so I end up doing a lot of pro bono type work, and because you want to get it right. But that's what I would prioritize.
Your reward is in heaven, my friend.
I have one guy. It worked out. I have one guy who he was involved in a conviction. He was convicted back in the 90s for a big shooting that happened, and I ran out of money, and I said, you know what? I believe enough in this case. I haven't charged him a single thing in the last 4 years. You just want to keep going. You want to keep going, and you hate that it's an injustice. So, I can't do that for everybody, but you do the best you can where you can.
Yeah, John Hodo always talks about that. That little percentage of pro bono work that he throws in there to make sure that you can do that. As a business owner and somebody who's trying to make sure my employees are all paid and food on the table, my family, that's something I struggle with too. It's like you want to, but then how much are you actually going to be able to do? And honestly, my specialty on the personal injury on the plaintiff side, I don't really have to do that much. It's not really, it's not the animal. But I respect the heck out of you and those that do that, especially on the criminal side, feeling that passion to do that, because it's very honorable, to be a good human and try and find the truth on that.
I appreciate it. I mean, you could look at it the other direction. Maybe I'm just not as good an investigator as I think I was, and I could have figured it out within the budget.
You could have stayed in the budget, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case, man, if your name's going around the prison. Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it is because, they get
I'm the guy that's just doing it for free. Yeah. No, then I end up quoting a much bigger sum of money for their friends that he's calling, suggesting to call me. But no, there's a reason why I do it, and it's and there's a reason why I didn't feel myself fitting in with the police department. And Brandon, I was listening to your interview with him the other day, and he was saying he didn't want to just be a patrol guy, and there's nothing wrong with being a patrol guy. I don't want to say that there's something wrong there, but I wanted to just do something that made, a personal difference. I want to be able to look people in the eye and tell them I'm going to help you out. Yeah. And, defending the Constitution, there's a person, nobody calls a PI because they're having a good day. They're calling me because they're in the middle of something. Yeah. And, I feel lucky to be able to be involved in their life in such an intimate way. Yeah. Attorney-client privilege extends to me. Nobody can force me to testify against these clients based on what information they tell me. So they trust me with the information. You have to still earn that trust.
There's two choices, right? They can call you or they can call Mr. Wolf. Either way, it's going to get solved. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably better to call you.
But, defending Constitution is big for me. His rights are my rights and your rights, and, the guy down the street. It's everybody. You need to hold the powers that be accountable, and you don't want to let them run loose, because it's really easy for rights to get trampled. And so it's almost like we're the last line of defense in this specific corner of the world, where criminal defendants we're the ones that are underfunded. The police departments, they've got hours and hours and overtimes and all that stuff, and investigators within the DA's office. Then you look across the aisle and it's the attorney and me. Yeah. And I've got a budget that I've got to stick to. So it leads to a lot of creativity, and it's a good responsibility. I like it.
Yeah, I think that whole comment about case management is so important. Even no matter what type of investigation work you do, you got to have a case management system involved in there. It really helps you with your budgets. It helps you with organization, and making sure that you're addressing things in a timely fashion is really, really important too. So
I think that's what sets apart a good investigator from an average. Anybody can go out and talk to somebody and ask questions, but a good investigator will be able to figure out the right questions to ask, and will be able to figure out that witness is a higher priority than that witness. And I know why, because I'm intimately familiar with the facts and the details of the case. And I've already decided that if I only get 5 minutes with this particular witness before they tell me to go F off, I can at least really try to squeeze in my highlighted points. You really need to prioritize everything, and the case management is absolutely crucial with that.
Great.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to wind down here. Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking about this a little, and just giving your perspective on how to do this type of investigative work. Let's talk again about that NALI conference. So give me just a little more information on that, and how can folks learn more about it?
Yeah, nallyonline.org. You can get on there and take a look. There's a big red bar at the top of the screen when you go to the main page. October 27th and 28th. All of the training presentations will be on the 28th, but there's some great networking events. We're going to be doing a tour of Pentagon. We're going to be doing a big dinner and hospitality suite at the hotel. But then on the 28th, we've got all those presentations and the CLI workshop. So I would encourage everybody to go check it out.
Great. Thanks, Dan, for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode, and we'll catch everybody next week on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Dan, for jumping on and sharing your passion for NALI and the criminal investigation work. If you do legal investigations, you should really consider checking out the conference in Virginia. A special thanks also goes to Crosstracks, PI Institute of Education, Scope Now, and OREP for sponsoring this show. So please support our great supporters. And don't forget, Investigators Toolbox, now is the time to get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. Use code episode 157 and save $100 on membership this week only. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a new show. So make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.